Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. I am your host, Duck. And today we are going to be talking about Photoshop, and in particular, Photoshop actions. Now, last week we discussed presets with Adobe Lightroom. So today what we're going to talk about is kind of like presets in Photoshop. The problem is that with Photoshop, actually, before I even start getting into that, let me just run down some news. Coming up August 22nd, I should have brought it with me. I left it home. If you've been following me on the Facebook posts, I created a series of cards called Photo Hunt Challenge. It's 2 decks for a total of 104 cards, and they are photographic challenges. And what I've done is I've scheduled it for, actually you see it right here, Photo Hunt Challenge, August 22nd. We're going to be meeting in Hamden, in the corner of Dixwell and, Dixwell and Whitney, I believe. Right where City Hall, the police station is. There's a little corner that's got, some greenery in it called Freedom Park. And it's a nice little area, plenty of parking, but everything is within a walking distance. So hopefully you'll have a variety of opportunities for photographs. And the way I'm working this is, it's kind of like a reveal party. I received the package from the manufacturer, from the printers, and I have not opened it yet. I'm kind of waiting for the 22nd. I'm chomping at the bits because I want to open the box and see the cards, but I promised that I wouldn't until the 22nd. So I want, if you come and join us that day for the reveal party, I want to get your impression of the cards. All right, so that's why I don't want to open it, because I want to get your first impressions of the cards when we all open it up and look at it at the same time. And then we'll run a couple of games, get your feedback on that, and see if there's anything that needs to be improved on or changed or modified or whatever. All right, so I look forward to hopefully seeing you on the 22nd. It's a Saturday. Hopefully the weather will behave and be nice to us. If not, I've set a rain date for the following day on Sunday. So anyhow, and other than that, not much going on. I haven't really scheduled anything else. I want to get a multiplicity shot together. That's still in the making. And I'm probably gonna keep that fairly close to home. So we'll see how that goes. Anyhow, I think that's it. I want to thank my patrons who are here today: Carol, Jill, Brian, Bonnie. All right. And if you like what I do and you want to support my teachings, it's always appreciated. You can go to Patreon/Learn Photography with Duck. Also, these sessions are being recorded and they get uploaded to YouTube. Unfortunately, with the outages and everything, I kind of got sidetracked because while I didn't lose power, our daughter did. So the grandkids stayed with us, rather than staying in a dark house. And we had all their groceries in our fridge and our freezer so that they won't go bad. So I had to deal with that. So last week's episode just got uploaded earlier today, and it is available. So if you missed last week's episode on presets in Lightroom, it's on YouTube. When you go there, please subscribe. Please let your friends know about my workshops. If we can grow this community, that'd be awesome. And don't forget to hit the notification bell on YouTube, so that way you'll be notified. I got a couple other little videos that I'm planning on making as well that are, photography related, but not necessarily, these here. Okay? So anyhow, let's get into our lesson for today. All right? I just have a random image here. One that I took at, you should all recognize it. This is down in Milford. But what we're going to talk about are actions in Photoshop. And if you haven't played with actions, you're missing out on a gold mine of opportunity. There are a ton of actions available out on the internet. Some are for pay, some are for free, but if you name it, you'll find an action for it. Okay? The only problem is that actions tend to be very specific to the version of Photoshop that it was built on, to a certain extent. And what I mean by that is over the years, some things have changed, some little tweaks have been modified that have rendered some of the older actions inoperable. Either they renamed something, or they changed the order or the structure of the menu or whatever it was. And it tends to break actions. And it tends to do it a lot more often to actions that haven't been built properly. And I'll explain what I mean by improperly built actions in a little bit. But let me get into a little bit of the mechanics of an action. All right. Basically, an action is a routine, a series of steps that Photoshop does to your image automatically without your input or very minimal input. So it can take a very long, complicated sequence and make it into a one-click action. All right, so that you click on the action. It's basically a script that runs in the background. It does all these things to your image and spits out the finished product if everything goes well. All right, and the way you access actions is you have this little play button here. Oops, let me this little play button here. If you don't see this play button, all you got to do is go to Window and make sure that Actions is selected. All right. And you can see I have a few actions already lined up here. Photoshop does come with a series of pre-built actions, all right, such as adding a vignette, creating a frame effect, molten lead effect, sepia toning, things like that. In my opinion, a lot of these are pretty worthless. For example, the wooden frame. Who's going to want to put a generic wooden frame around their image? You know, it just doesn't make any sense. But I guess it's there if you are not familiar with actions. It allows you to play around with actions and you can see kind of how that action is built. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, it's just a series of steps that the computer does for you without your input. And if you look at these, you'll probably recognize some of the steps. Make a layer, set foreground color, add a fill, add noise, create motion blur. All right, so all of these are things that you can do in Photoshop. Additionally, like I said, you can download a whole bunch of different Photoshop actions that are shortcuts to varying effects. Now, what I've found is that typically, if it's for free, you might get something usable, but it's not going to be of the same quality as an action that you have to pay for. And there are a few sites out there that I recommend. One of them is Envato Market. Actually, let me pull it up on a browser, and I'll show you what I mean.
Doc,
Yes.
while pulling that up, in other software I see this term called record a macro. Is this similar, or is part of it, or another name for it?
Do what again?
Well, in other softwares I've heard terms called record a macro.
Oh, yes.
So
Yes.
Is that what this is, or is this more or less than that?
It is very, very similar. In other editing programs, yeah, it would be pretty much the same.
Okay.
A macro is a subroutine, a collection of steps, a collection of actions that you would do. But yes, it's basically the same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Just named differently. All right, so here's Envato Elements. It's Envato Market. Actually, not Elements. I need Marketplace. Where is it? To graphic add-ons. Let's see. But Envato is a good resource for all kinds of stuff, right? Photoshop actions. Let's just do that. Okay. All right, and so here are a lot of actions that are available for you to purchase. All right, so you can see some of them. It's to make your image look like a pencil sketch. This one's got this kind of like a dispersion effect, so it makes it look like it's exploding. There are all kinds of black and white or color or sepia tones, eye retouching. Here's abstract one. Here's one that makes it look painterly, kind of like a pointillism. So there's all kinds of actions. All right, one that makes it look like watercolor. All right, and the ones that you'll find on Envato, I've never run into one that I thought was badly written. These are created by people, by artists who are just at a different level of Photoshop. And they take these creations of theirs and they create an action that allows their effect to be repeatable by just about anyone. And they build these really, really well. All right. And they are very well supported. A lot of these are supported with little tutorial videos that shows you how to use the action. Some may be multiple step actions. For example, a lot of these will require you to make a selection by painting on a certain area of your image, and then the first action makes the selection, and then the second action runs the actual, modifications to the image. So there, you name it, you'll find it here. Now, the problem with actions, I wouldn't say it's a problem, but the thing you have to understand is that actions tend to be a one-trick pony. Meaning an action is built to give you one very specific look. All right. A lot of these artists, they tend to build multiple looks into a lot of their actions, but they are the multiple looks are done by you actually tweaking the various layers after the fact. So once the action has run, you can go in and turn layers on, turn layers off, and make very specific modifications. All right, either to a color layer or to a texture layer or whatever it is. Now, what I'm saying right now is probably going over your head because I'm mentioning things that you may not be familiar with. But I just want you to be aware that this resource is available. All right, and a lot of these are just a few dollars for an action. All right, let's see. All right. Oh, they've looks like they're going to a monthly subscription plan. I've been able to download actions for anywhere $6, $7, $10, for an action, and it's really, really good quality actions. And I'll show you a couple that I've downloaded. Okay. All right. The way an action works is you call up your action panel, you decide which action you want to apply, all right, you select it, and then you come down and you hit the play button, all right. So up here is your list. You go ahead and select what it is you want, then you come down and you hit the little play button, and then you sit back and you just let the action play out. Depending on how fast your computer is, will determine, how fast the action goes. Or some actions are designed to work with a slightly lower resolution image, not necessarily a full resolution photo. All right, so you'll notice that if you resize your image down first before running your action, the action will run faster. I just loaded up a full, let's see, yeah, it's 16 megabit image, so that's why it's running through. Now, on your action panel, all right, it won't let me do it. It's still running. You'll notice that on my action panel, I have a series of folders. All right, so you can actually, just like the presets in Lightroom, you can create folders to organize your actions according to what effect the action does. All right, so you can have actions that do very artistic effects, but you can also have actions that simplify your workflow. All right, so you can organize them accordingly. All right. One set of actions that I'm going to go over is these. Oh, where are my? these here that says check layers, all right, I'll be explaining those in a little bit more detail. These are handy to have, and we might have you build your own check layer while we're here. Okay. Of course, I should have resized it, but all right. While that's doing that, like the presets with Lightroom, there is a right way and a wrong way of building them. All right, but with presets in Lightroom, while you can do a lot with Lightroom, you are limited to the abilities of the sliders, meaning that you have a set number of panels, and each panel, it has a predetermined number of effects, and each one of those effects has a predetermined range that you can go. So for example, in the basic panel, when you want to change your exposure, you have a very limited set on that on the exposure slider of what you can do to your image. I think it's like 4 stops, okay? Or the color balance, or the highlights and the shadows. All right, so there's a lot of restrictions already built in to Lightroom. So building presets in Lightroom is relatively easy compared to building presets in Photoshop. Because when we get into Photoshop, now what we have are layers with no set limitation of how many layers you can have. There's no set limitation on the order of the layers that you can create. It's all now based on what you as the creator can do. So the actions in Photoshop need to be a little bit more fluid. All right, and because of that, there aren't as many restrictions on how to build actions, and this leads to some problems, especially when you're starting to share actions, or if you're trying to create an action in the middle of a workflow. All right, so for example, one of the things that can break an action is renaming a layer. If the action is looking for a very specific layer name and it doesn't find it, the action is going to come crashing to a halt. And it's going to give you a warning saying, hey, I can't find that layer. I can't go any further. All right? But the layer may actually be there. It's just renamed. So it's a lot more sensitive of what you can do. All right? Because unlike Lightroom, where the names of the panels are locked in, you can't change the name of the panels. You can't change the name of the sliders. All right? In Photoshop, you can very easily change the name of a layer that's attached to an effect. All right? So you may be using a curves layer, all right? And the default name is curves, but you can change that name. All right? So if you build an action that is looking for the name curves and you've changed it, it's not going to find it. All right? So this is one of the reasons why, you know, more professionally done actions will make allowances for that and rename the layers accordingly. All right, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And of course, we're still processing here on my laptop, of course, because I'm also streaming, so my computer's a little bit slower. All right. Let me go ahead and cancel this. if I can, if it'll let me. Here we go. Oh, that's weird. Okay. File, open recent, PNG. All right, let me. Done. Okay. Let me close this. Actually, say no. File, open recent. All right. I'll just reopen it. Done. Oh, what happened? Oh, I know what I did. Open recent. Not done. That's the wrong button. Click open. Yes, yes, yes. All right, I'm going to, let me reduce this down. Edit. Let's see, where is it? Image size. Let me 1980. Oh, wait a minute. 1920. All right, why is my okay? It's not letting me change. That's strange. All right, well, more than one way to skin a cat. All right, okay, there we go. My keyboard's not working properly. What the heck? Why does this have to happen when I'm live? All right, so here we go. Paint action. Vector. All right, so I'm gonna apply this vector illustration style, and these are all the different steps. All right, a lot of repetition. Okay, and I'm gonna hit play, and you can see that it moves through them a lot faster when you have a smaller file. All right, and then it kicks out the end results. All right, so this action is one that I built when I was working on the cards for my photo hunt challenge cards. I was using stock photography, but rather than use the actual photographs, I turned them into these kind of like vectorized illustrations. So I built this preset or this action specifically to handle that because I had 104 images that I needed to process all the same exact way. So this actually saved me a lot of time and effort in the editing department. All right. So that's the benefit of an action. So let's break it down. All right. Yes.
I have another question. So, like this one we're looking at here, so if I were to get my hands on this particular action and run it on an image, so then could I use the action almost as a pedagogical device to help me learn how you did that by seeing the imprints of what it did? Does it show you that stuff after the fact?
It does, yes. And yeah, so actually if there's a little down arrow right next to the action, and if you click on it, it will actually show you all the different steps. All right. So the first step that it does is it converts it from 16-bit to 8-bit. All right. And the reason I did that is because I am taking advantage of the filter gallery. The filter gallery has, all those fun artistic effects that make it look like oil painting or charcoal or watercolor. All right. But they only work on 8-bit images. All right. So Yeah. So if you ever download an action and run it, and you can't figure out why it's not running it, it's giving you an error that the filter gallery is not accessible, it's because you need to convert your image from 16-bit to 8-bit. All right. So the first thing that I built in my action was to do just that. And all it does is, if I get an image and I want to convert it from 16-bit to 18-bit, I would have to go up to, where is it? Image, mode, all right, and click on 8-bit channel, all right? So I would have to, image, mode, 8 bits, all right? So I would have to go up here to this menu, click image mode, 8 bits channel on every single image that I want to edit using the filter gallery. All right, but like I said, I had 104 images to process. All right, so the first thing I do is I delegated that task to the action. Okay. Then it's a layer via copy, meaning create a duplicate of my layer. All right, the shortcut key is Control J. If you've ever had to duplicate your layer, all right, that's all it does. So now what it's doing is it's working on a copy, leaving my original untouched. Okay, now as you get into editing in Photoshop, the one thing you want to do is you want to guarantee that you are working non-destructively, meaning you're not doing any physical changes on the pixel layers of your original image. Okay? So that way, as you're editing, if you screw up something, all right, and something goes awry and you can't back out of it, you always have that original image to fall back to. All right, so it's kind of like a safety net. All right, so that's the first thing I do is I convert it to 8-bit, and then I create a copy of it so that if there's something that I don't like, I can change it on my original, rerun the action. All right, so now, for example, if you notice here, the one thing I did not do before running my action is I did not run my spot. I did not clean the image for all these little spots and flecks that were on, in the image. And now, after I've run the action, these spots, all right, the little sensor dust really, really shows up. I mean, look at these. All right, it's the nature of the action that I built. It's designed to really enhance certain details. All right, so now after I've run the action, I look at it and I say, oh man, I got all these spots I got to take care of. Well, unfortunately, I could go and clean it up here, all right? But I can also get rid of everything that I've done, go back to my source image that is still there, make my cleanup, rerun the action, and then I'll be good to go. All right? Now, that's just a small example. All right? And you might even say, what's the big deal? You can just, remove those spots on the finished product. Yes, you can. One of the things about this particular action is that it relies very heavily on contrast to find edges. And on certain images that don't have a lot of contrast, when I run the action, the end result looks a little bit funny, a little bit flat. So at that point, I tend to scrap it, go back to my original, because now I've seen the end results. I know what area I need to address. I can go in and I can take something like a burn brush, all right, and burn the edges to give myself a little bit more contrast, rerun the action, because you saw how fast that action was once I scaled it down, rerun the action, and have a better result after running the action, after correcting it and rerunning the action. Okay. All right, so going down, we see that the next thing it does is it does a smart sharpen and then a diffuse layer. Then it does a series of image rotations by 90 degrees and adds a diffusion. Now, the reason I do this is because the diffusion that I ran does it on one axis, and I wanted to do it on all four axes. So by rotating the image, it allows that diffusion to properly create, a diffused image. So it rotates the image, does the diffusion, so it's very, very repetitive. So imagine having to do 104 images where you have to go up here, image, rotate 90 degrees, run the diffusion, go back, image rotate, run the, it just, I would be pulling out hairs, okay? So it does this several times. Then it converts it to a smart object. Now, we haven't really gone into smart objects yet, but a smart object is a way of being able to embed certain tasks that would otherwise be destructive. All right, it's a way of embedding it into your document to give it kind of like a pseudo non-destructive element to it. We'll discuss smart objects, at a future workshop. But so in this
future 2 workshops.
Future 2, yeah.
I went to a smart object last week, and I go, what the heck do I do with this thing?
Yes, smart objects are a beast all their own. The best way I've been able to describe it to people is being to embed a document into your document. All right? So a smart object, once you create a smart object, what it does is anything you do to it becomes isolated in its own little cocoon, all right, that you can open up as a separate document embedded into your original. All right, so anyhow, but that's for, like I said, another lesson. All right, sets the current layer, then it makes 2 new layers. All right, and what it does is it creates these folders, all right, and then it takes that layer and does a series of steps to it, all right, and then does the same thing to another folder, all right. So we make a layer and it duplicates it, calls one soft detail, another one hard detail, applies different filters to them. Going down, it keeps applying filters. So I'm using a lot of filters in order to really warp my original image in a way that I want it, okay? Makes it into a group. All right, set current layer basically means it's moving from one layer to another. Makes adjustment, then it goes to this one. It does a levels adjustment, a vibrance adjustment, and a color balance, and then calls it quit. All right? And the action is done. Now, the end results, you can see, is a tidy little bundle. All right? I have all my effects that are applied to my image segregated into its own folder, its own effect folder, okay? And the adjustments that I can do to that folder are in its own folder above it, all right? So it's maintaining my hierarchy for me, all right? So all I did to create this is, once I knew what the end results was that I wanted, all right? I figured out all the bugs. I figure out, what layers I need to create, what effects I need to apply. All right. And as you saw, it's pretty complex. At this point, I said, I got to do 104 of these. I'm making it into an action. So once I figured out everything, I then go to my actions panel. Let me close this up. All right. And all the way down here at the bottom, all right, right next to the little play button is a little record button. All right. The little round symbol, that symbol is for record action. And what I do is I start off with my original image. I click the record button. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No. I'm missing a step. I have to tell Photoshop that I want to create a new action. All right, so I go to the little plus symbol here. Okay, and that's going to start a new action process. And what you're going to do is you're going to give it a name, new action. All right. You can have it go to a pre-existing folder. All right. So if you see where it says set, all right, default actions, all right, if you look here, it's the same as everything up here. I have everything organized in folders. It's going to ask you what folder do you want to store this action in? So we'll put it in the paintings. All right. You can also assign it a function key. All right. A function key is basically a shortcut. Now, the only problem I find is that if you have a shortcut already applied to one of these function keys, you're not going to be able to use it unless you remove whatever shortcut is attached to it. All right. But this is a great way of creating a keyboard shortcut to your action. All right. So if you have an action that you use over and over and over, and I'll explain some of those a little later, it might be worth it to you to give it a keyboard shortcut. Okay. And you have F2 to F12, but right next to it you can also assign additional commands by saying a Shift F2 or a Control F2, all right, or for Mac people, Command F2, all right. So you can expand. You're not limited to just those 9. You can expand them by putting a Shift and Control in front of it. All right, and you can also give it a color label, and that just colors it up here in your layer panel. I usually don't. And then when you're ready, you just hit record. All right. Oh, wait a minute. See, give me an error. Let's go to none. Hit record. All right, and now this record button is active. All right. You notice that it's red now, where before it was white. Okay. That record button is active. That means every step you create, everything that you do within Photoshop, Photoshop is going to record that step. So you have to be careful of what steps you record. Once it goes into record mode, you want to do the steps that you want to save for your action. Can you edit your action afterward? Absolutely. But you want to give yourself a clean recording right from the start. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop that. All right, oh, what the heck is going on with my computer here? There we go. All right. I'm not gonna record one right now. All right. All right. If you don't like the action, you can always delete it. Just select your action. All right. You can either drag it down to the trash bin, or just select it and then click on the trash bin, and it'll get rid of it. Okay. All right. Let's get into some practical actions here. All right. What? All right. There's something really going strange here with my system. My mouse is like not working properly. I don't understand what's going on here. This is weird. Okay. I have a series of actions. Oh, I know. All right. Give me 1 second. Let me plug in a mouse, see if that works better. Here we go. All right. I have a series of actions called check layers. All right. Check layers. Now, I didn't come up with these. I actually found them, found tutorials for them online. If any of you follow Pix Imperfect on YouTube, he's an awesome Photoshop teacher. All right. If there's anything you want to learn about Photoshop, check out his channel, Pix Imperfect. The guy's name is Unmesh Dinda. He is from India. But let me tell you, his tutorials are very easy to follow. He breaks everything down into individual steps. He explains every step, and he gives you the background of each step. So not only do you learn how to do it, but you also learn why you do it. So I highly recommend his channel. So anyhow, these check layers I actually got from following his tutorials. All right. So for example, there's one here called spot removal check. All right. So if I click on that, oh, now see, my mouse is just, all right. And I run that, okay, it's going to give me this really funky looking image. All right. Now the thing about check layers, all right, or let me backtrack a little bit. The thing about a properly built action, all right, is right here. It did not destroy my original. All right. So because this is a check layer, meaning, and what I mean by a check layer is that this action creates an effect on your image that is designed for a very specific purpose. In this case, is to really highlight where the dust and spots are on your image in order to correct for them. Okay? Once you're done using a check layer, you just get rid of it. You don't need it. All right? It's not something that you need to save with your file. All right. You use it as part of your workflow. Once that part of the workflow is done, you chuck it. All right. So in this case, we can see that if I zoom right in here, all right, look at all these spots. Look at all these spots here. All right. Now, if I turn that check layer off, all right, they're a little bit harder to see. All right, talk about, this is an old image, by the way, but talk about having a dirty sensor. Okay. Some of these spots are very difficult to see. All right, by having a check layer, it allows me to really see all these spots. Okay. And the nice thing about this particular action is it's very simple to build, and it's very quick because all it does is it creates one layer. All right. So let's go ahead and build this action. Okay. All right. So now, Brian, you mentioned earlier being able to analyze an action to kind of dissect it to see if you can either maybe pull pieces from it or replicate it. All right. So let's do just that. All right. We're going to click on the little side arrow and we're going to open it up. And you can see that this action is just literally 2 steps. All right. Make an adjustment layer. All right. And then you set that current layer. All right. So now if we click on a little arrow next to those, it breaks it down even further. It lets you know exactly what that step is doing. So where it says make adjustment layer, all right, now we have a lot of adjustment layers here. All right, these are all our adjustment layers right here. All right, so by clicking on that little arrow, we can see exactly which adjustment layer. All right, and in this case, the type is curves. All right, so we know this uses a curves adjustment layer, all right, and it's been renamed to dust and scratch. All right, now the label is something that I added to let me know what that layer does. So I am attaching a real world label to that layer so that when I refer back to it, I see a description rather than a layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, or adjustment, or curves 1, curves 2, curves 3. All right. Now, this particular action is very simple. It just creates one layer. But you may have an image that's 25 layers deep. All right. So at that point, labels make a big difference. When you can see a curves adjustment, read the label and say, oh, this is for my skin tone. Oh, this is for the green grass. Oh, this is for the sky. All right. So labels play an important part, and it's crucial to building a good action. All right. Now, why is that? As you are creating layers, Photoshop is going to assign it a generic name. All right. So in this case, it's creating a curves adjustment. The first time it does it, it's just going to call it curves or curves 1. The next time you create a curves adjustment, it's going to call it curves 2. The next time after that, it's going to call it curves 3, and so on. All right. Now, if you create an action and it starts creating curves, all right, it's going to create a curve and name it according to whatever was named previously. So if you start an action in the middle of your workflow and you already have 3 other curves, when it creates that curve, it's going to call it curves 4. If that action does not rename that curve 4, it's going to just leave it whatever Photoshop gives it. Now later on in that action, if it refers back to the curves that it created, when you first built it, it was curves 1. Now when you're using it, it's actually curves 4, but the action is going to be looking for curves 1. So if it finds a curves 1 already in your workflow, guess what? It's picking up the wrong curve adjustment. So it's going to throw the rest of the action completely haywire. All right? Now, however, if you, when you built it, you gave that curves adjustment a very distinct name, then when it refers back to it, it's not going to refer back to just curves 1. It's actually going to refer back to the name that you gave it, and it's going to find it because it's unique within your whole structure of layers. Hopefully that made sense. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Okay. So in this particular case, I gave it a name, Dust and Scratch. All right, again, to remind me what it's doing. And I also gave it a color. All right, you can see that it painted the tab red. All right, that lets me know visually when I see that red tab, oh, there's my check layer. Again, I could be doing this in the middle of a long list of steps that I've already accomplished. All right. So now at a glance, I can look for that red. That red lets me know it's a check layer. All right. And if I need to delete it, I can go straight to it. Or if I want to turn it off, I can just turn it off. Okay. Easy to find. So that first step does all that for me in one shot, in one go. All right. The second step is set current adjustment layer. All right. So it creates the layer, gives it a name, gives it a color. All right. And then I want Photoshop to do something very specific to that curves adjustment layer. So once it creates it, it goes to it, makes my adjustments. All right. And what does it do? Well, it creates a series of points. All right. What do I mean by points? Okay. Let me turn this off. I'm going to create a layers adjustment. Anytime we click on the layer, it's going to create a point that we can drag up or down. All right. That point, okay, that point has a coordinate system. All right. So if you look at this, this is a graph. It's got an x-axis and a y-axis. All right. It's a coordinate system. So anywhere along here, all right, it's going to have a coordinate. All right. All right. Let me get rid of that. Delete. Oh, come on. Should have done this right the first one. All right. All right. And in this particular case, this curves adjustment has a very funky point system. All right. What I'm doing is I am really shifting my color channels to create this weird effect. All right. So I'm taking my shadows and I'm dragging them up, taking my midtones, dragging it down, taking my lighter midtones, dragging it up, and taking my whites and dragging it down. All right. This is what's called a solarization effect. All right. And all this does is it really highlights, it creates contrast. All right. Because here we have our blacks. All right. And it's telling the blacks keep them black. But it's taking our shadows. All right. And saying take our shadows and move them up. Make them very bright. But our lighter shadows, getting more into the midtones, make them dark. All right. And the other side of our midtones, make them lighter. And then our highlights, make them dark. So it's really shifting our exposure all over the place and creating this funky effect. All right, so all it does is it creates this contrast, and that contrast allows us to see all these little spots. Okay? So let's go back to our, all right. So when we open that up, we can see our adjustment layer, all right, applied to our curves. We are going to create these points. Okay? And then that's it. There are no more steps. The action is done. We can stop it. All right? So let's replicate this. All right? We're going to go down to the bottom where the little square with the plus is. Okay? We're going to click on that. All right? We're going to call it spot removal. All right. You can add check. I'm not going to add check because it's going to conflict with the one I already have. All right. And I want to put it into my check layers. All right. If you don't have one, well, no, of course, you're not going to have one. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of that later. All right. So let's put that into, we'll put that in my default actions for now. Okay. We're not going to give it a function key. You can do that later if you want. And I'm not going to do a well, yeah, I'll do a color. All right. I'll label it red. Red lets me know that it's a check layer. Okay. And then we're going to hit our record button. All right. Actually, before I do that, let me go ahead and let me get rid of these. Let's start fresh. All right. New spot removal. Okay. We're going to keep it in our default. And we're going to give it red. And we're going to click on record. Okay. So now it created the placeholder for our action right there. Okay. And it put our record button active. So we are now actively recording. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to layer, new, new adjustment layer. Okay? New adjustment layer, curves. All right? So we want a curves adjustment. All right? Now, the reason I'm going to the menu rather than coming over here is because I want to assign it a title, a label. And I also want to assign it a color. You can't do that from here. This is just, these little icons is kind of like a quick action. You click on it, it automatically creates the layer for you and assigns it a default name. I don't want to have a default name. All right, so we're going to go adjustment, curves. All right, and here we have our dialog. All right, we're going to call it dust. All right, because we want to look for all these the sensor dust that we missed. All right, and scratch. Okay. This is basically an old leftover term from the film days, when your film would pick up all kinds of lint and scratches from being handled. All right, and we're going to give it a color. All right, and I mentioned that I like to use the color red for my check layers. All right, we're going to leave the mode by itself. Okay, I'm not changing the mode. Okay, and we're going to hit, and the opacity is going to be the same, 100%. All right, and we're going to hit OK. Okay, now you can see it's created it. All right, but it hasn't done anything to the actual curve. All right, so this is where we're going to go. We're still recording. All right, it's recording in the background. All right, if I click on the action, it'll show it to you. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a series of points. All right, and we're going to drag up, drag down, drag up, drag down. All right, and create this kind of funky W shape. And it doesn't have to be perfect. All right, you just want that kind of like really funky colored solarization effect. All right, once you have that curve, all right, you'll see it displays it. All right, that's it. We go to our action, we hit the stop button. All right, the stop button is right next to it. This is the record button. All right, see it's lit, it's recording. We go to the stop button and we click stop. Now, the nice thing about this, all right, is that as you're building your actions, if you ever need to pause, all you got to do is hit the stop button, and as long as you don't change this position, if you hit the record button, it's going to pick up where you left off. All right, so it's a great way of being able to take breaks from, or to test, make sure that if you get lost to where you are, you can take a break from recording, check it, and then come back and start your recording. All right, so here we have our spot removal, make adjustment layer, set our adjustment, and as you can see, all right, we have a very funky image. All right, and if we turn that off, there's our original, there's our check layer. So now I can go here. All right, I can come to my where's my my healing brush tool. All right, my spot healing brush. All right, and we're not going to work on our check layer. All right, we're going to actually work on our either your original or create a copy. All right, Control J. All right, and now because I can very clearly see these spots, I can go ahead and click through and just clean up my image. Makes it so much easier when you can see all these spots. All right, now I am a product photographer. A lot of the products that I photograph have smooth surfaces that tend to pick up a lot of lint, a lot of dust, okay? And because they're kind of smooth, oftentimes if the dust particle is very light, it's very difficult to see. So I rely on this particular action all the time. I use this action more than any other action in my collection because it allows me to really see all these spots, okay? And then I can guarantee that when I'm done with my spot cleanup, I have a very clean looking product, Okay? All right, so this is how to build an action. All right, any questions so far? Any questions?
Yes. How do you make a new folder if I wanted to make a folder that's
Okay.
check free?
Awesome, because that's what we're going to work on next. All right, so when I made that check layer, all right, let's pretend I didn't have a check layer folder already, okay? It put it into my default action, all right? That's not where I want it to reside, right? So here, right next to the new action icon is a folder icon, all right? So you click on that, and it's going to ask you, all right, what do you want to call it, all right? I just call it checks and balances for now, just so it doesn't conflict. All right. And when I hit OK, it creates that new folder. I can then just click and drag into that folder. All right. And I can rearrange all my existing actions very easily. Okay. And then once you have that folder, all right, which is a set of actions, once you have that set, when you create a new action, all right, you can select it from the little drop down, all right, to create additional checks and balances. All right, any other questions? All right, so let's go back to my little check layer. All right, I have some more advanced ones: luminance check, saturation check, and hue check. These are a little bit more advanced, so I'm not going to go into those. All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I followed along and created the action, and then what I did was I closed out the image I was working on, opened up another one,
Yeah.
and ran the same action against the new image.
Yep.
It ran, but it stopped at every step and made me, click through the two steps, if you will. Like I called it spot removal, and then when I clicked on spot removal, it popped up with, create a new layer. So that I had to click to OK that. And then it clicked up with, the creating the other layer, the curve layer. But is there a setting or?
Okay, so yeah, so let's check. All right, in your actions panel, there's a little hamburger menu icon. Go ahead and click on that.
Wait. The hamburger, okay, yep.
Yeah. All right, and here are a bunch of little things that you can do within the actions menu to kind of enhance certain things. All right. So right at the top, you have what's called a button mode. All this does is it changes the way your actions are organized. All right. Here I have the default is organized by folders, but if you click, you can go to button mode. All right, and you can see it creates these buttons. All right, and this is where the color labels come into play. You can see my red are all my check layers. Okay, my black ones I have not attached a color to. Green, orange. All right, so some of these are the ones that come preset with Lightroom. All right, but the red ones, those are all the ones that I created as check layers. All right. Further, I hate that view by the way. You can create new action sets. All right, but here you might want to check the playback options. All right, playback options. So let's click on that. Okay. Because this is one of those little hidden features that when you are building your preset, or if you want to learn a preset or action and what it does, if you click on here where it says step by step, it will actually take you step by step through your action. All right, so you want to check that, make sure that you are on accelerated mode for your system. All right, again, hamburger menu here in the corner, playback options. All right, make sure that it's unaccelerated. All right, let's see. I think that's pretty much the only place. All right. Additionally, if you need to create a pause, like for a dialog box, all right, if you click on the little square, okay, it'll give you this little icon. All right, if that is lit, it will stop at the dialog box. Okay. All right, and I will show you what I mean. All right, so I'm going to click both of these. Actually, let me unclick those. Let me delete my action. All right. I'm going to run the action. And just look how fast it goes. All right. As soon as I click, bam, it's done. All right. That's how your action should look. All right. Let me delete that. If I have these dialog boxes checked, all right, and I run the action again, it stops at the dialog box. It fills it in with what I previously told it to fill it in with, but it stops. All right, and it waits for my input. All right, and then once I hit OK, it goes to the next one. All right, and again it waits. I'm going to say OK. All right, does it, and I'm going to say OK. All right, so make sure that if that little dialog box is lit on yours, you want to uncheck it. Okay? Means it's active. Means that little square is active. You want those squares to be blank. Did that make a difference on your system?
I'm testing it now. No. Oh, no, I did the wrong. I see. Never mind. Let me just talk amongst yourselves for 10 seconds. What am I doing here?
Oh. What the heck is... yeah, my system's acting weird, and I think it's got something to do with the fact that I'm streaming here or something. Look at this. This is weird. I'm just doing a click, and it's drawing little lines here. All right. Anyhow. All right. Any questions on how to build an action? Okay. The key features is that... Yes.
When you're done, I have a question when you're done.
All right.
Later.
The key features you need to kind of keep in mind is that you want them to work anywhere within your layer structure. All right. So if you are creating a layer, either a new blank layer, or you are creating a new adjustment layer, you should name it. Okay? Because if your action refers back to any of the layers that the action creates, you want to make sure that it's able to find it. And rather than give it a generic curves 1, curves 2 label, you want to give it a specific label to refer back to. Okay? That way you're guaranteed that your action's going to work no matter what. All right?
Okay, here's my question. I was looking at some of the, I guess, the default ones. I'm assuming they're default because they were here when I got here. And there's one, for instance, called Vignette.
Yes.
Now, when I click on Vignette and try and run that, the first thing I see is it says, the command feather is not currently available. So, what does that mean? Where's feather? There's something missing? Is it, because as I continued on, I ran into another situation. It said the command layer via copy is not currently available.
Okay.
Is that a situation where what you just described was renamed and?
Okay. Actually, I'm so glad you did that and brought this question up.
Good.
All right. I hate referring back to last week's class because anybody who watches the video, you know, is not gonna get it. But one of the things that I mentioned with the Lightroom presets and why I hate using other people's presets is because you do not know what they built it for or how they built it. All right? When you build your own presets, you understand the internal mechanisms. And here's a classic example. All right, now, there's actually a clue in the title. All right? And you can see it says selection. All right, so what this does is it creates a vignette based on a selection. All right, so you have to have the marching ants. All right, if you try to apply it to something that does not have the marching ants, it's not going to work because the feather effect is done to a selection. All right, so now here you ran into a problem. You can't understand what the heck is going on with this preset, with this action. All right, and this is where we can now open it up, all right, and start analyzing it. So the first one is make a snapshot, all right, and what it does is it creates a snapshot is basically just that. It takes a snapshot of your current workflow and saves it into the history. All right, so as you move forward, if you say, oh man, this is not what I want, you can go back to your history panel, go back to where that snapshot was, all right, and then it basically resets to that point in your workflow. All right, so that's nice to have, all right, because should anything go wrong, you have a way of coming back, all right. The next one is feather, okay. Now, when you ran it, if you did not make a selection, all right, it cannot apply a feather, all right, because there's nothing selected, all right. So right away, you're going to run into an error. Okay. However, if you make a selection, it's going to apply a 5-pixel radius feathering effect, all right, to a layer via copy. All right. So whatever is in that selection, it's going to copy it as well. All right. Show current layer. Make layer, basically it just switches, all right? and then it adds a fill. All right, and it uses a white fill at 100% opacity at normal mode, and then it moves back to the current layer. All right, so let's try running that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to select my circular selection tool, and I'm just taking a guess here right now, Brian, all right, because it says it's going to work on a selection, all right, and now in my mind, a vignette is applied to the corners, right? All right, so now if you look at the way vignettes are done in Lightroom, it's usually an oval in the center of your image. That's why I'm assuming for this action, I'm assuming that's what they're looking for. All right, so I created my selection. All right, I go to my vignette and I'm gonna hit run and see what happens. Okay, it says a radius of 5. All right, because see that little icon there, my dialogue icon. All right. It stops here because even though the default for this particular action is 5 pixels, you can overwrite it. All right. So 5 pixels may work with a lower resolution image. All right. Here I have a full resolution. I might want to go to 10. And all right. So I'm going to say 10. I'm going to click OK. And it's going to run the rest of the action. And now we can see why it did white. All right?
So, Doug?
Yeah.
So when I did that, I did like you did. I got the step, but then when I went to the next step, it said something about cannot create layer via copy, or did it show yours?
Okay. All right.
I think that's down in, subservient to that, or down
Subservient.
below that feather.
All right. I'm going to delete everything. All right. And I'm going to run that same. Here we go. Create my oval. All right. And I'm going to run it, and I should run into the same error you do. All right. I'm going to say go ahead and give it 10. Oh, no, it did it.
Okay.
Okay. I was wondering maybe because yours was locked. All right, the background locked.
Oh.
All right. I thought maybe that was it. It's not. I'm not sure why you're getting. I'm not sure why you're getting an error.
Okay.
So after you click after the feather.
So yeah, let's see. I'll do it again.
Huh.
Highlight. I click on vignette, and I click go. And it asks me for the feather radius. I click OK, and it did it this time. I need a crowd.
Murphy's Law. That's the thing. All right. But, that's one of the frustrations when working with an action that you're not familiar with. All right. And this is, going back to what I said earlier about the actions that are for sale at Envato. All right. I'm not promoting them for any reason other than I find they have a quality product. All right. Their artists, when they create these actions, they actually create a tutorial video that shows you the proper way of using their action. All right. Because a lot of these actions, require a certain prerequisite. So like, for example, this one, it was through a little bit of trial and error to discover that the prerequisite was to have that selection. All right. Now, if you had seen a tutorial that says in order to use this vignette action, you need to create a selection, you would have known right off the bat. Okay. But that's one of the frustrations with working with somebody else's action.
Well, let me ask this last question about this, Doug, with respect to that kind of stuff. Since this thing, vignette selection, was shipped with Photoshop, I guess that was my initial thing. Indeed, it came with the product. I would have thought it would have worked a little. Or are we to assume that, like you say, that somewhere there is instructions that we should know about, or that's expected, or we're just on our own?
Yeah. All right. Show of hands. How many of you have been working with Photoshop since version 2 or 3? Okay. All right. Only one person. All right, Bri. You remember when Photoshop was shipped back then, it came with a book. All right. It came with an instruction manual. All right. Over the years, and I have to say it was probably around the early 90s. All right. Once the internet started becoming a little bit more popular, they got rid of the book. All right. And they started putting a lot of the tutorials, the instructions. They basically took the book and put it online. All right. Now, do you remember how frustrating it was trying to make sense of any of the instructions in that book? The first time I opened that book and trying to figure out how to do even the most simplistic things, I was ready to chuck that book out the window. It was so frustrating. All right. And of course I would, yeah, it was literally worthless. All right, because they, of course, they don't know how to write manuals. All right, so I had to go to the library, find a book that made sense, walk me through specific steps, and even that was a challenge. Okay, thank God nowadays for YouTube tutorials. Because now you can visually see each and every step. All right. So I think over time, Adobe has gotten a little lax with their tutorial system. They've left it to others to do. All right, now they have some very talented instructors at Adobe. Julianne Koss is one of them that comes to mind. She works for Adobe. She creates tutorials for Adobe, but it's great because you can visually see each and every step. All right, and it's easy to follow. All right. But now we have all kinds of video creators like Unmesh at Pix and Perfect that takes all these things and breaks it down for you and teaches it to you. All right. So while on the surface these actions that come preloaded may seem worthless, in conjunction with other training that you find online, you have a resource available here that you can experiment with. All right. So for example, after today's class, now that you know how to dissect an action, all right, here you have a series of actions you can actually come in and dissect and see, okay, what makes these click? All right. In my opinion, they're pretty worthless, but it lets you get under the hood. All right. All right. Now, as your experience level goes up, you can now look at this vignette action and say, okay, can I make this better? All right, absolutely. Instead of creating a white fill, all right, maybe it would be better to insert a solid color fill. All right, so we got time. Let's do that. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this vignette one, and let's see, can I duplicate it? Duplicate, yes. All right, and I'm going to bring it down to Duck's Awesome Actions. Okay, I'm going to keep it called Vignette Selection Copy. All right, we'll just keep that name. All right, and I'm going to open it up. And now, so I analyze it and it says, all right, this action creates a white vignette. All right, but what if I want to give the vignette some color? Okay, so instead of doing a white fill, what if I just replace it with something else? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go where it says Make Layer. I'm going to place the cursor there. I'm going to come down to my record button and I'm going to activate the record. So now I am in record mode. All right, so instead of the fill, I'm going to come down and create a solid color, and I'm going to give it a white fill, and I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to stop it. I'm going to go to the actual fill, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag that to the trash can. Okay? Everybody see what I just did? All right. I went to the position where the action creates that fill. I went one step up. So in between those layers, I'm inserting a different layer. I'm inserting a solid color fill layer. And then that white layer I just got rid of. All right. So let me reset this. I'm going to go to the beginning of my action and I'm going to play it. Oh, aha. Let's stop it. Let's make our selection first. Okay. And then press play. All right. Again, I'm going to make that 10 because I like the look. Hit OK. Looks the same, doesn't it? All right. Now here is where really knowing Photoshop a little bit more comes into play. I can now go to this layer and I can make it red, I can make it blue, I can make it green, any color under the rainbow. All right. Just by making a change to that layer that was created in the action. All right? Make sense?
Could you show that one more time? How you did the color layer?
Okay, sure. All right, so let me delete that. Okay. I'm gonna go. Let me delete these as well. Let me reset. All right. So here we are in our default action vignette. All right. I'm not going to make a change to the actual file. Excuse me. So I'm going to make a copy. All right. So I go up here to the little hamburger menu. And I'm going to select duplicate. All right. And it makes a copy. All right. And you can see that it appends the title name with the word copy. Just for me, I'm going to move it into my folder. Okay. All right. So this is a little gratuitous naming here. Duck's Awesome Actions. You might argue how awesome these actions really are, but I consider them awesome. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to expand that action copy that I made. All right. And here, where it says fill, all right, having run this a couple of times, I know this is the layer I want to change. All right, because it's going to create a white 100% normal fill layer. Okay, I want to be able to make changes to it. So I'm going to go one layer up, all right, in my stack. All right, one layer up. And I'm going to hit the record button. Okay, so now it puts the action into record mode. So anything I do in Photoshop is going to get recorded in the action. All right, and because I'm just making a quick change, I don't need to worry about what's here. I just need to worry about that one step I want to add. And the step that I want to add is to come down here and add a solid color layer. All right, solid color layer. Instead of a fill layer, I'm adding a solid color layer. All right, and the reason...
What did you click on to get that? I'm sorry, you look like you were clicking down at the bottom and I couldn't see.
Okay.
To get the layer?
All right. Yeah, so... let's see, down at the bottom. Yeah, oh, all right. I know why. Because I'm probably hiding it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Sorry. Thanks for pointing it out. Okay. So all the way down at the bottom, you're going to see a series of icons. The trash can, new layer, new layer group, and new adjustment layers. Okay. It's the circle.
That cookie thing?
Yeah, the circle that's half black, half white. All right.
Thank you.
Now, when you click on that, you're going to see everything here in your adjustments layer panel is here, but in addition, there are a few others, all right? And that's at the very top. Your solid color layer, your gradient, and your pattern, all right? These three are only available through this menu. They're not available up here. Why? I don't know. I wish they were up here, but they're not. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and select solid color. And this is why I want to replace it. Because this allows me to pick any color that I want. All right. By default, all right, for my default action, I'm going to keep it to white. All right. If you want, you can make it black, whatever you want. Okay. And you can say OK. All right. And here you can see that it created a new layer. All right. At this point, I am going to stop the action. I don't want to record anymore. All right. Then I go to the original fill layer that makes that white layer, and I'm going to delete it. I'm going to click on it and just drag it down to my trash can, or just highlight and click the trash can. That's the only change I made. Okay? So now I'm going to get rid of this layer, and I'm going to actually run the action from the start. So I'm going to select my vignette selection copy. Click on the play button. Aha! I did it again. All right, let's make a selection. See how easy it is to forget? That's another reason why I think this is a bad action. All right, so now that I made my selection, I'm going to reset to the beginning. Click play. Change that to, let's make that 50. All right, hit OK. And there's my nice vignette. Okay. And of course, now I can go back into my layer stack right here. All right, double click on that layer. And I can say, all right, make it red, make it blue, make it whatever. Or I can select the color right from here. So let's select that, kind of like sky blue. All right. And hit OK. And I've reset my color. All right. Now, here we go. Let's make it black. Here's the black. All right, and you say, oof, that's a little bit too harsh. Well, guess what? All right, the action, part of the action, what it did is it made the base layer, it turned it off. It turned the visibility off. All right, I'm going to turn the visibility back on. I'm going to go to this layer here, and instead of 100% opacity, I'm going to give it a 50%. All right, and there we go. We have a little bit more subtle. So you can actually control the intensity of that vignette. Is that cool? All right, and because I can create whatever color I want, all right, why you would want, a red vignette, who knows, but maybe if the predominant color of your image is red, why not? Find a nice dark red color. Oh, let's make it a dark blue color, all right? There we go. So here we go. Nice dark blue color, all right? Instead of black, I can use blue, all right? And I can have a pretty intense vignette that doesn't quite overpower it like a black one would, all right? So, again, this plays into the ability of Photoshop to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do to your image. Okay, so now what I've done is I built in a property into this particular preset that allows me to modify it after the fact. All right, rather than previously, it just, it gives me a white vignette, and if I want to, make it black, I would have to go in, select the black fill the space with black. I've made it a little bit more easier to use. All right, make sense? Did I lose anybody? Yeah, Bob, I lost you. Sorry. Carol, I lost you too, didn't I? Somewhere along the way.
I'll try it tomorrow.
Like I said, anything you learn, at first it's going to seem very complicated. Again, it's like building that jigsaw puzzle. You start off with the easy pieces, and then you start moving inwards. Well, guess what? This is definitely moving inwards. All right? This is not one of the easy pieces. Okay? All right. Any question? Bonnie, you're looking a little perplexed there. You're good? Okay. How about you, Jill?
This is Bob.
Yeah.
You did that so you can vary it instead of just changing the where it said white.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand what you did. I wasn't lost too completely. I understand that you changed it because you wanted to have the flexibility instead of changing every color.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, in order to make it a little bit more usable down the road, I might make additional changes by saying, all right, instead of giving it these default names, all right, like here it says layer 1, all right, I might go back and tweak it and say, all right, instead of calling it layer 1, let's rename it, something else. Vignette layer copy. All right, so it'll give it something a little bit more unique rather than something generic. Okay, because again, if I'm in the middle of my workflow, all right, and if I have to refer back to this particular layer with another part of an action, all right, it's going to mess things up. All right, so having unique names helps avoid problems down the road. All right.
I have another question, or a
Sure.
question about where to set your cursor when you're about to start the record macro with the fill. You said put it on one above the fill that's existing.
Correct.
So would that be, and there's a set selection which has an arrow, and then right below it there is an action that says do none.
Okay.
So would you just click on the set selection and then?
All right. So here's the original.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the original. All right. And the original first thing is make a snapshot. All right. So it puts it into your history. All right. Take that selection that you made and add a feather. All right. Once you've feathered that selection, it's going to use that selection to create. All right. To create a copy. All right. So you can see here's, I'm just showing you the copy part. All right. So what it does is it isolates this part of the center part of the image from everything else. All right. So it makes that selection and it creates a copy. So layer via copy. All right. Show current layer. All right. Meaning it's going to go to that layer, and at the same time, all right, with toggle others, it's going to turn off the visibility of the background layer. All right, so that only this layer is visible. It turns off the background layer because at this point it has not yet created that fill layer. All right, so it brings attention to our selection, turns off the background layer. All right, then it makes a fill layer. That's the white background. All right, and then it moves to the previous layer. So it creates that one and goes back up to the layer one that it created. Okay. So now that I know what each one of these steps does, I then make the decision that I don't want a white layer. I want a layer that I can control the color of. All right. And for me, it's this solid color adjustment layer because a click and I'm in a new color. All right. That's the one I want to replace. All right. So I'm going to replace the fill layer. So right now I have the fill selected. Okay. You can see fill selected. I'm going to move up one in the stack because I want to place it between these two layers. All right. And when I record, it always records, and every time it creates a new action, part of the action, it adds it afterwards. All right. I wanted to add it after make layer, but before the fill layer. All right. So there's where I'm going to insert my new command. Okay. I go to record, solid color. I'm going to give it a default white so it matches what was originally done with the original image. All right, and it inserts it right there.
Okay, so Doug, the hard part is when we're watching these is that, for me anyway, your screen isn't legible until I watch the. So you're highlighting the thing that says show current layer, or you're highlighting set selection? Highlighting fill.
I'm highlighting make layer.
Highlighting make layer. Okay,
yep.
Thank you. Okay.
So that way, when it adds a new effect, it's going to add it after, but before the fill layer.
Okay.
All right. Once I have that new layer in place, I can go ahead and delete my fill layer. Because I don't need it now that I created the make fill, right? All right. Yeah, you do know that if you click on the three little dots on my screen, you can expand it to fit your your screen.
No, I don't.
All right. When you go to the Brady Bunch grid, all right. If you hover over my image, you're gonna see a little blue button that's got 3 dots in it.
Got you on. Pinned you.
Oh, you did pin me. Okay.
Okay, I pinned.
All right. Yeah. So you can say pin to.
Yeah, right,
all right.
right.
Yep. So when you pin me to the second screen, you can then expand that screen, full screen, or make it bigger. All right.
Right.
So hopefully.
Well, that's why I am. But the way that this video works is that that stuff's like it's not really legible. I've been going by.
Oh, okay.
Counting the lines.
Sorry. I could share the screen, but then, it kind of disrupts everything else.
No. I just wanted to make sure, because what I do is, if I really want to clarify, I'll go back and watch the video, because the resolution.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, so there we go. All right, any questions about any of this? All right. Okay, just realize this is an introduction to actions, all right? There's a little bit more that can be done, all right? We touched a little bit on pausing at certain spots, okay? You can do other things like, for example, let's go back to our vignette one, okay? One of the things wrong with this is that it does not give you instructions. So we can come here and we can insert, where is it? I think it's insert conditional. No, that's not it. Insert a stop, all right? Here we go. We can create a message. Please make a selection of your image using the circular marquee tool. All right? And say OK. All right, and it places it at the end. I want to make that at the very beginning. Okay? So now let's see this. I'm gonna reset everything. All right. I'm gonna select my vignette and I'm gonna go ahead and click on Start. Hey, please make a selection of your image using the circular marquee tool. All right. Okay. There we go. There's the instructions that it needed. All right. And then I hit play and we are good to go. And that's why you should build your own. Okay, let's see.
Thank you very much, Doc.
All right, hopefully you guys learned something a little new today. And hopefully I did not fry your brains too much.
Thanks, Doc.
Okay. All right. Again, don't forget Saturday the 22nd. I am doing my photo hunt reveal. It'd be great to have a bunch of people out there. I've done the photo hunt in the past with my little homemade cards. All right. But it's nice to actually have a professional set of cards to play with. So I would love to get some feedback on them. The photo hunts alone are a lot of fun. Okay, we'll see how it goes with social distancing. People are wearing masks, so we can't get expressions. But hopefully, there's enough to photograph out there that it'll keep things interesting. They've always been fun in the past, so please join me. Sign up for it on the Facebook page Learn Photography with Duck, go to the events page. The event is listed there. Let me know if you're planning on attending. It's going to be starts at 10 in the morning, so that way, hopefully we'll be done before the sun gets too hot. And we'll have fun. All right?
Great. Thank you.
All righty, guys. Always a pleasure. If anybody has any questions, you can still reach me through Facebook. Just drop me a note, or you can, drop a message on Messenger. Okay, and I'm more than happy to help you out. All right.
Thank you, Doug.
All right, Bonnie. Thank you for attending. Thank you for being here. Alan, Brian, Bob, Jill, Carol. All my regulars, my Patreons. I couldn't do this without you guys. I really couldn't. So I thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Stay safe. We'll see you next Monday. Is general Q&A about anything photographic. All right. See you then.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.